To keep these decades-old aircraft fighting into the foreseeable future, the Air Force is pursuing new advanced radar systems that can unlock the full fighting capabilities of the older bombers, allowing them to eliminate ground targets, as well as take on non-combat roles, such as taking out ships at sea and engaging in aerial combat. Northrop Grumman, a major U.S. defense contractor, is currently pushing to replace the B-52 bomber's outdated NAPQ-166 radars with its NAPG-83 Scalable Agile Beam Radar, SABR, as part of the B-52 radar modernization program. The SABR system pitched for the B-52 is the same as that being installed on Air Force F-16s. Northrop Grumman has an enhanced SABR variant for the B-1B Lancer as well. Also in the running to provide improved radar systems for the B-52, Raytheon is pulling radar capabilities from the F-15's APG-63 or V3 and APG-82 Active Electronically Scanned Array or AESA radars and the APG-79 on the Super Hornets and Growlers, according to an earlier statement from the company. The U.S. Air Force is determined to see the 60-year-old bombers wage war for at least a century, so the heavy, long-range bombers are receiving a variety of upgrades to extend their length of service. Improvements include an upgraded weapons rack for smart munitions, new engines, and a new radar system, among other things. Northrop Grumman submitted a proposal this week to Boeing, which is handling source selection for the radar upgrades for the Air Force. The company states its SABR system leverages the proven, fifth-generation active electronically scanned array radar capabilities of the NAPG-77 on the F-22 Raptor and the NAPG-81 on the F-35 Lightning II. Incorporating AESA radar capabilities into the B-52's sensor suite would be a big deal, the Warzone's Tyler Rogoway explains, noting that an advanced radar system like Northrop Grumman's SABR could improve targeting, surveillance, and situational awareness. The upgrade would allow the bomber's 6-man crew to simultaneously engage ground and naval targets in all weather conditions and at greater distances, target enemies using advanced electronic attack capabilities, and even engage in air-to-air combat if necessary. The upgrade would allow the bomber's 6-man crew to simultaneously engage ground and naval targets in all weather conditions and at greater distances, target even with these enhanced capabilities and the B-52's ability to carry a large arsenal of weaponry into battle. The aircraft will be better prepared to fight in contested anti-access zones and defend friendly forces. China and Russia, both of which are locked in military competition with the U.S., have been pursuing standoff capabilities to create anti-access area denial environments, and the U.S. military is working hard to counter emerging challenges to American operations by developing its own standoff capabilities. For instance, during last year's Valiant Shield exercises, B-52 bombers practiced dropping new 900-kilogram derivatives of the Quick Strike ER or Extended Range Naval Mine. The bombers can lay devastating minefields from 80 kilometers away. Northrop Grumman and Raytheon are also competing to replace the NAPG-73 radar systems on older model F/A-18 Hornets, with Northrop offering the SABR system and Raytheon offering its APG-79, according to Inside Defense Mice using advanced electronic attack capabilities, and even engage in air-to-air combat if necessary.
Korea has the capacity to deliver a nuclear weapon via a missile to the United States. Not to prevent it, but to preempt even their capacity. And he's saying that, like, look, if it happens over there, it happens over there. It's not going to happen here. We can't know what's in Trump's mind because, untreated syphilis does strange things. No, but we can't know what's in Trump's mind, except we can hear what he said, I guess now 15, 16 years ago on Meet the Press. I don't know why it would be relevant, his opinion on that 20 years ago. But he was on a Meet the Press with Tim Russert, and basically Trump is making the exact same argument that we heard Lindsey Graham make.
And the biggest problem, we can talk about the economy, we can talk about Social Security. The biggest problem this world has is nuclear proliferation. And we have a country out there, North Korea, which is sort of wacko, which is not a bunch of dummies, and they are going out and they are developing nuclear weapons. And they're not doing it because they're having fun doing it, they're doing it for a reason. And wouldn't it be good to sit down and really negotiate something, and ideally negotiate? Now, if that negotiation doesn't work, you better solve the problem now than solve it later, Tim. And you know it, and every politician knows it, and nobody wants to talk about it. Jimmy Carter, who I really like, and he went over there, it was so soft. These people are laughing at us.
The former General of the Air Force, Merrill McPeak, the former Secretary of Defense, Les Aspin, said you could not launch a preemptive strike against North Korea because the nuclear fallout could be devastating to the Asian Peninsula.
I'm not talking about us using nuclear weapons. I'm saying that they have areas where they're developing missiles.
No, but taking out their nuclear potential would create a fallout.
Tim, do you know that this country went out and gave them nuclear reactors, free fuel for 10 years? We virtually tried to bribe them into stopping, and they're continuing to do what they're doing, and they're laughing at us. They think we're a bunch of dummies. I'm saying that we have to do something to stop.
But if the military told you, Mr. Trump, we can't do this.
You give me two names. You're giving me two names. I don't know. Do you want to do it in 5 years when they have warheads all over the place, every one of them pointing to New York City, to Washington, and every one of our... Is that when you want to do it, or do you want to do something now? You better do it now. And if they think you're serious, I deal with lots of people. If they think you're serious, they'll negotiate, and it'll never come to that.
And he is,
and
heading
he still
down
sounded
this path.
more lucid then.
He did.
Which is what's disturbing. Already crazy, arrogant, unhinged, discounting
same
of
ideas,
advice, but same basic idea and same just
but with a vocabulary over like 5 or 6 words. It's like he can't grasp this stuff anymore in the same way. But the same dynamic is there. Like, let's preempt him. Now, of course, 17 years later, he was a little bit ahead of the curve as to when they would have ballistic missiles all over the place that could hit New York. But the same theory exists there. Like, let's just take him out. There's no sense of like, wow, the cost. And he also didn't seem to understand the argument that if you were to blow up their facilities where they're developing nuclear warheads, then in fact the fallout would be amazing. And he's saying, I'm not talking about using nukes, but he didn't quite get the idea that like when you blow up nuclear material, the radioactive fallout.
Well, let's use this as a broader teachable moment about wealth not equaling intelligence. Because remember, a couple years ago, Sheldon Adelson was at a forum with Shmuley Batrek, one of the most gross groups of humans on stage together, and he was like, basically sitting in it, he's like, what we need to do with Iran is we're going to drop one nuke on them as a warning, and it's going to be in a desert, and no one's going to get hurt. Just going to be in the Iranian desert where no one lives. Maybe a couple animals will be killed, but no people. So, but we're going to show them we mean business. He actually said that.
Yeah.
That's like basically the core driver of the Republicans' Middle East policy. That guy's checking account.
Moab. Hi folks, Sam Cedar here.
Let's bring in our panel here in Hanoi. Eric Talmadge is the Pyongyang bureau chief for the Associated Press, and Jeff Earl is the deputy U.S. political editor for the Daily Mail. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. Eric, your sense first. First of all, there's a rare element that the North Koreans come out and hold a press conference. Clearly, they wanted to put their point of view out there. Your sense of where things are after this summit fell apart?
I think the North Korean side was clearly surprised by the outcome. I think they're disappointed, and so they wanted to make sure that they got their position across. They took a little bit of an issue with President Trump's claim that they wanted all sanctions removed, although they pretty much admitted that they were looking for pretty much all the sanctions to be removed, all the significant ones.
When you're talking about the sanctions, you've got these UN sanctions. There's 5 of the 11. It's essentially the meat of the sanctions would be taken out if they drop those, right?
That's right. So the North Koreans came out with a really big ask right from the beginning, and so it's not really surprising that didn't work out. But I don't think we should keep in mind that Kim also vowed to maintain his moratorium on missile launches and nuclear tests, and that's a really big deal. So we don't need to go right back into crisis mode. We can continue talks, and I think the door was left open for that. So that's an important outcome.
Jeff, the president will be on Sean Hannity's show tonight. We have a piece of that talking about his reaction to this deal. Take a listen.
They wanted to denuke certain areas, and I wanted everything. And the sanctions are there, and I didn't want to give up the sanctions unless we had a real program. Mm-hmm. And they're not ready for that, and I understand that fully. I really do. I mean, they spent a lot of time building it, and that doesn't mean the world has to be happy. But I wanted them to denuke.
You know, a lot of times these things are baked in the cake, that the lower level officials go in, they do all the grunt work, and then the leaders come in and kind of pull the rabbit out of the hat. This time it's the 2 leaders really doing the negotiating.
Absolutely, and there's a reason for that, because that leaves you less likely to be in a situation where you fly 8,000 miles and you don't have anything physical to show for it. Now, this is a unique situation, and Kim Jong-un is not the leader of every country in the world. But I think President Trump, invested a lot in his personal diplomacy, and so far we don't have anything to show for it.
But the walk away, does that give him more street cred in the region or back home?
Well, I think people who, and the North Koreans watch President Trump very closely, and I think people who know him know that this is a classic negotiating tactic for him. So if he's unwilling to take their initial ask and walk away and demand more, I think they know that that's a little bit about what's going on. And
after a 2-day trip by train and car. Now, the talks will focus again on Kim's nuclear arsenal, but the president and his Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, seem to be sending mixed signals on how big a threat North Korea really is. Ben Tracy is in Hanoi, Vietnam's capital, where the summit will begin in just about 36 hours. Ben, good morning.
Good morning. After that first summit in Singapore, the Trump administration said that it expected North Korea to start taking immediate steps to get rid of its nuclear weapons. Well, that has not happened, and now just days before this second summit here in Hanoi, President Trump seems to be trying to manage expectations.
We have a special feeling, and I think it's going to lead to something very good, and maybe not. I think also
Speaking to the U.S. governors Sunday night, President Trump said he's no longer pushing North Korea to quickly give up its nuclear weapons.
I'm not in a rush. I don't want to rush anybody. I just don't want testing. As long as there's no testing, we're happy.
North Korea has not tested a missile or nuclear device for more than 400 days, a self-imposed pause long before the Singapore summit. Kim Jong-un claims he's already completed his nuclear program and no longer needs the tests. But there is ample evidence that the regime is still producing nuclear fuel, working on its weapons programs, and evading international sanctions. North Korea has taken no clear steps towards denuclearization, despite President Trump's tweet after the Singapore summit that there's no longer a nuclear threat from North Korea. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo contradicted that claim Sunday.
You think North Korea remains a nuclear threat? Yes. But the president said he doesn't. It's not what he said. What he said is that the efforts that had been made in Singapore, this commitment that Chairman Kim made, have substantially taken down the risk to the American people.
Secretary Pompeo says this process may take time, that it may require more summits. You may recall after that first summit, there was this vaguely worded document that said that they would work towards the complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. Well, now Trump administration officials acknowledge that part of this summit will be to define what that term actually means. John?
Indeed. Ben Tracy in Vietnam. Thanks, Ben.